afternoon, everyone. So the crowd has kind of withered away. Lunch khake, everyone was waiting here for the lunch and then they just went away, right? Anyway, we have an interesting panel here for you, and we have an interesting topic here for you. We're looking at the risks for 2024. As per the recent report which has been published, there are top 3 risks that they are catching in for 2024. One is the infighting and the infaction in the American political system.
Could I request the organizers to get the music put off, please?
Like I was saying, that the first is the infighting or the political instability in the US. Second is what we are all reading about for the last 100 days or 100 plus days now is the Middle East crisis with Israel and the Palestinian escalations. And third is the possibility of Ukraine losing its ground to Russia with the upcoming US elections. So, and in periphery are so many other things which are taking place right now. You have Yemen blocking a major waterway, faction of the Yemenis. Then you have the Iran and Pakistan altercation which has just emerged. And the China-Taiwan is history slowly crawling forward. So let's talk to our panelists today. Sanjeev, sir, I'll start with you first, right? So I would want to understand, Yemen has decades long of a history of supporting Palestine, of course, because of a shared history, cultural equation that they share. But in spite of the embargo that Yemen is suffering for the last 9 years, they still went ahead in this altercation of the Middle East and blocked the waterways, attacked certain cargo ships of Israel and US. How do you feel this affects the region in terms of business, in terms of the geopolitical scenario, and anything that you would like to add on to this?
All right, so it's a very interesting question, and all the while that I've been doing whatever little talks that I've done, I've been in the first half, and I've always slipped away in the second half, and it's called the graveyard session. So my aim and our aim would be to keep you all awake in this session and give you some very interesting inputs on the geopolitical and global risk in the sequence. The question she's asked is very interesting about the fall-off of Israel-Hamas conflict in the region which is east of Israel, southeast of Israel, and particularly the coastal waters close to Yemen and the Red Sea which is there and the impact on the cargo that is flowing to the Red Sea. Why this topic is interesting, and though while it's far off from India, but the topic is so important to sort of look at, because it's going to affect not only just India, it's going to affect the entire globe. And largely, it will impact each and every citizen in the globe, not only just you and me, our pockets, but in 4 to 5 months, if this conflict is not brought under control, and not just the conflict, it's the Yemeni situation not brought under the control, even the auto rickshaw wala which is driving on the road will feel the pinch and feel the heat. So what is this conflict about? So the backdrop, of course, you're aware that the Israel-Hamas conflict that started in October, and a fallout of that, a faction group in Yemen called Houthis, they started attacking the sea cargo which is going through the Red Sea, and the attacks were so severe that it almost looked like they're state-sponsored attacks with very sophisticated weaponry, and therefore the cargoes are getting impacted. So let me take this topic in 3 parts. One is, what are Houthis? What are they doing and why are they doing it? In the second part, I would talk about the trade. What's the overall stats for the trade and how the trade is going to get impacted? And third is, what is the solutions around it? And that's the most important part. So it is an intersection of geopolitical risks and geopolitical situation, a maritime security, and trade and commerce. So 3 triangles, and each one is very important. So let's start with the first one. Who are Houthis? The Houthis are a rebel Yemeni faction, which are basically Shiite faction, which has been supported and backed by Iran. It started in 1999 by a man called Hassan al-Houthi. The name comes from the Houthi tribe, and his name is Houthi, and he started this movement. And because of the backing it had from Iran, for the years, the war went on till it reached 2014, where the group actually took over the Yemeni capital, Sana'a. war was, it was more of a civil crisis in the country. Backed by the Saudi coalition, the Houthis were stopped, controlled, pushed back, and they managed to get internationally acceptable government in Yemen. But as a result, a large portions of Yemen are controlled by Houthis independently. They run parallel economy, they have their own currency, and they're completely independent, but they're not recognized anywhere internationally. So these are the Houthis. What are they doing and why are they doing it? Obviously, when they are backed by Iran, there's a reason that they are absolutely against Israel. So when this conflict happened and Israel went back into Hamas and started killing people there as a retort reaction, the Houthis, supported by Iran, have sworn that anything that passes through the Red Sea, which has got anything to do with Israel, if it's carrying Israel flag, it's carrying Israeli crew, or is carrying Israeli cargo, will be targeted. Now, what are they targeting these ships with? If you take your mind back in 2008, there was a Somali piracy situation near the Horn of Africa. An entire globe was impacted, and everybody was impacted. And very soon, people started bringing their frigates and destroyers to control the situation. And situation, in few months and in years, was brought under control. But this is not the same situation. This is very different. And towards the end of my talk, I will speak a little about how to, what are the implications, how different it is from them. So Houthis have very sophisticated weaponry, and with the surface-to-surface anti-ship missiles, with drones, UAVs, and loitering munitions. They call loitering munitions, which loiter around and then target very quickly on a discerned target. They are attacking the ships. So there is nobody in the sea, but they're being launched from Houthi soil. And though while they say they're targeting Israeli cargo, Israeli ships, but in last about 2 months or so, there have been more than 3 dozen attacks on ships, and most of the attacks have been on the ships, which are actually non-Israeli ships, including 2 Indian ships as well. You must have heard that Indian ships are in the news. So there are huge implications for this. So let's look at the trade that flows through this area. 12% of the global trade flows through the Red Sea and Suisse, 12%. About 9% of oil imports flow through this, of the globe. And about 4% of LNG imports, and about 30% of all container ships, 30%, that's a huge number, go through this area. Now, these are getting impacted. As far as India is concerned, India too is impacted because the closest route from India to Europe or to US is via the same route. Now, if this impact is there, look at the economic impact. Now, the alternative to this is that you avoid this route because obviously it's a war zone now. You go via the south of Africa, via the south of Cape of Good Hope, and you reach Europe or you reach US. But that takes a lot of time. So if from India, if you're going to Europe, it takes about 7 to 8 more steaming days. If you go to US, it takes about 10 to 12 more steaming days. Now, it has 2 implications, a time implication and a transportation cost implication. Each freight carrier costs about US $45,000 per day. So if you multiply that into 11, 12, you can see the amount of cost that is going to go up. And as far as time is concerned, I'll take India for an example. A shipping cycle is about 56 days. Now, if you go via this route, you have to add 9 to 10 days. That means it goes to 63, 67 days. Now, a shipping cycle needs 8 ships to get completed. Now, if it goes to 63 days, you need more ships. Where are the ships going to come from? It's not something that you can make in a day or so. I mean, it takes years to build ships like that. So if you don't have ships, what you do? You start missing the ports. So it's called planned failings. When you start missing the ports, the exports, cycles will get rescheduled. As a result, there'll be slowdown in the economy, there'll be slowdown in the growth, which will again impact each country of the nation, of the world, as well as India. And obviously, the effect is going to get rippled onto the common man in terms of high cost. So these are the problems that you are facing. Now we look at the solutions. 3, 4 areas to look at. Let's look at the non-military solution. I'll come to the military solution later. But a non-military solution can be divided into 2, 3. First is that accept what is happening. Currently, 2 oil majors and 5 major shipping companies are actually routing their ships via the Cape of Good Hope. So that's something that's happening. Will this become permanent? it may become permanent. So you need to look at capacity building, and you need to look at cost absorptions. Things are bound to become expensive. You can't just take away the cost like that. So me and you are going to live in a more costlier world after that. But is that a permanent solution? It's something that we need to think. Second, there are alternatives. You must have heard of India-Middle East Economic Corridor, which is a land route starting from India all the way to Saudi Arabia. Now, these kind of corridors are being thought about. They've already been thought about. Now, they need to be given impetus. There is another corridor, which is Islamabad, Tehran, and Istanbul corridor, which goes via Pakistan, Iran. But both these initiatives that are talked about are very sensitive. They're geopolitically very sensitive initiatives. And anything happens in the country, anywhere, between the two countries or between the neighboring countries across a country, these corridors are going to get impacted. So is this a real solution? We need to look at that. And third, which is a non-military solution, is offshoring. Now, offshoring has been talked about for a very, very long time. Offshoring basically means that you take your manufacturing bases closer to your port, closer to your destination. It's not a new thing. It's been tried for a very long time, but it has its own implications, its own long-term implications, huge cost investment, huge politically sensitive issues that you need to touch upon. And it's not as easy as it sounds, but it is a long-term solution. So these are the three areas. Now, where do we look at the maritime security solution? As you're aware, there's a US-led coalition which is initially started with 10 countries and now joined by 6 more countries. It's called Operation Prosperity Guardian, where they have put their frigates and destroyers in the sea, and they're looking at the situation in that sea, how they can counter Houthis. Now here, if you look at the classical Somali pirate, which we could control, they were non-state actors. But this is a state-sponsored situation. It has been sponsored by... So Iran has claimed that they are only morally supporting Houthis, but in actuality, the whole lot of sophisticated weaponry is being smuggled from Iran into Houthi locations. And Houthi is a state player being a non-state player. It's in Yemen. There's nobody controlling it. So how do you preempt these attacks? Very difficult to preempt these attacks. And they're not getting into the sea. They're using this sophisticated weapon, the new age, like I said, loitering munitions to target ships. And the damage is not huge. It's a small damage. Most of the ships have not sunk. None of the ships have sunk. But the ships are avoiding this route because the crews are refusing to go on these routes. And therefore, they're forced to reroute their ships via Cape of Good Hope. And if you take it through this, obviously she mentioned that the insurance cost. It's gone up almost 10x times. The insurance has gone up 10x. That means overall impact on your increase in cost has gone up to 40 to 60%. Well, that's a massive increase for the goods that you trade. If you look at India, what are we trading? Our entire trading component is about 18 million TEU. TEU is a cubic unit, 20 feet unit equivalent to a container. It's a container unit. We have 18 million. So roughly we divide half of this into imports and exports. Imports a little more, but our imports are largely from the East. We're bringing our stuff from the East, which is the gems, jewelry, in the crude, oil, edible oil we'll get from the East. The whole lot of stuff is coming from the East. Electronic goods comes from the East. But our exports are to the West. And our economy obviously is dependent on exports, right? We need to get in money when we sell things outside. And exports are going through this route. So we are majorly impacted. And if this situation doesn't come into control, India will be one of the most impacted nations amongst the others as well. Now, what role can India play in this? So it's, again, a very sensitive and a very intricate topic. If you look at the people around Iran, there are not very many countries which have great relationship with Iran. And we're going to talk about Pakistan, Iran in a while. India has a great leverage with Iran. India, while being a neutral party, has always supported Iran. Even in the recent Iran-Pakistan strike, India has actually backed Iran and said that Iran is legitimate to do this for self-defense. So India has a voice in Iran, and India must leverage, not only just India, even China. China has a voice. China is a great ally of Iran. So unless you have a political solution to this, when you leverage through your diplomacy, through your deterrent, country like Iran, which then will flow down to the state-stroke non-state actors like Houthis, this situation is unlikely to get into control, and we all are going to face the brunt of it. And this famous strait called Bag al-Mandab. Actually, historically, its Arabic meaning is the Strait of Grief, the Strait of Tears. And the name is coined after an earthquake which came many centuries ago, which actually divided the peninsula and created this little sea route in between. So they talk about whether this name will actually come into being and the whole situation will call grief to the people or will remain a misnomer. That's for the time to see.
Ashok, so I'll come to you now. We discussed the Middle East crisis. I would like to go back to the Ukraine-Russia war. It's been 2 years and still going strong, and things have shifted now from what was originally thought, and Russia has gained ground. People are talking with the US elections coming up, and if Trump wins, he's no fan of the Ukrainian war. He will withdraw his support, and Ukraine may get fractioned with that. So what are your views on how this will impact the region and the business and anything that you would want to put out here?
Thank you, Vashita. The session after lunch is always something like Russia and Ukraine war, which is long drawn, and thereafter the impact is seen much later. So it is, what is it going to be? And the 2 years long battle which is going on, which is mostly in favor of Russia at the moment, because Ukraine has been financed by the NATO countries and US in particular. Now that is a major point of consideration, because if the US withdraws its support financially or in terms of militarily, the Ukraine is bound to lose sooner or later. And Russia will occupy most of its area, and in almost 13% of area is already occupied by Russia. So the impact of the elections in US will have an impact on Russia-Ukraine war, surely. Assume that we are only assuming that Trump wins and he withdraws. Assume he does not win. There's a possibility of that he is not winning, because there are court cases against him, and then there's a possibility he may not be able to even campaign. For that matter, this will carry on. However, Russia's military might is much stronger than Ukraine, and they will surely do it. Now, what is happening is, we had an issue of supply chains right from the beginning, when the US-China were not in good terms. Unfortunately, Corona came in, and thereafter, this war came in. Now, the supply chains, what Ukraine was able to give us, it has impacted India very badly. I have information that there was an industry in Ukraine which was supplying engines and spare parts to Indian Navy. However, because they were not able to produce so much and they were hampered, so what happened? India, one of the entities, not naming it, it's bought the complete industry there with the support of the government of India. And we are trying to get our resources from there. So what matters is how you control those supply chains. Ukraine is a major source of millet, wheat, and everything. Whereas now India is gearing up for this. Although loss of a life is surely a concern, but it's a great opportunity for India as well. Because this is how the agriculture will improve upon, and we are able to market ourselves very well. G20, what we did in India, has made an impact globally, and it has surely made impact to other countries that India stands above all, because we are a non-aligned, we believe in non-aligned. See, Russia has been able to give us oil, but I'm sure the audience knows how the oil came to India. I'm sure you know. It was one of the entities in India bought the oil for government of India by paying yuan to Russia. It was not through dollars, and this was not through Indian rupees. So, balancing of these supply chains, balancing of these alliances, balancing of this information is what is concerned. Now, Russia-Ukraine has misinformation campaigns and PR campaigns which carries on. How much it is true, how much it is not, nobody knows. So how do you manage that? How do you find that? The only way to find out is you go to Russia or you go to Ukraine, which is not possible. So therefore, whatever media used to cover earlier is not covering now. Why they are not covering? Because they know it is a pointless coverage because Russia is thumping Ukraine and Ukraine is on the receiving end. As earlier Major Gaurav did mention in earlier his talk, that sooner or later, same case with Israel and same case with Russia, they both will conquer both of those respective countries, irrespective of whatever time it takes. But the point is, which is more concerning, is the refugee crisis, the management of the human resources, the people who are dying. How much of settlement it will take? How is it possible? If Ukraine is totally plastered, how much time it will take for them to rebuild? And who's going to rebuild? That's the point. Who's going to fund so much? So the impact globally of Russia-Ukraine war is affecting all the countries, but everybody is making its own channels, making their own connections, making more alliances, and that will keep on happening as it progresses. So therefore, the geopolitical effect of Ukraine war is something which is felt, but the fact remains, country like ours, India, have made their own alliances. They have made their effects to other countries, and they are trying to work out, okay, even if it continues for 1 more year or 2 years, economically, India remains stable. See the market, which is happening, irrespective, the market is still growing, and that will keep on growing. So the startups which happened in India did help India to make its own image in the world. Just to, put it in a very small thing, migration of the people of Ukraine to other NATO countries has happened. But in fact, now they do not wish to go back even. They don't want to go back. Why they don't want to go back? They know there is no future there. So that is an effect which will have on Ukraine and on other NATO countries. But as far as India is concerned, we are far away. So therefore, we may not have direct but indirect effects. Vashita, I suppose there's a lot of supply chain is a major issue which it needs attention by everybody. So that is an area which will be of a concern, and that will keep developing on and off as the battle progresses. That's it. As for now, we can add more, but I suppose time is the one constraint that we cannot move. And just a last point. See, there are constants. And the constant between Ukraine and Russia is that Russia is thumping and Ukraine is receiving, but only on support. Like there is a constant between the 3 gentlemen on this dais, and all 3 are supporting a beard. That's a constant. Thank you.
So, Sanjay sir, I'll come to you now, and I will shift a little bit away from the geopolitics of it, because the world is a potpourri of turmoil right now. In your view, other than the geopolitics, do you feel that there is any other risk that the companies need to be geared up for and be, geared up the resilience for?
Thanks, Vashita, and thanks, Business World, for giving me this opportunity to be here and interacting with you all today afternoon. So we heard a lot about geopolitics, heavy stuff, a lot of enlightenment. But one thing which is slightly different, moving on a different axis, is what I feel is climate change that is very strongly coming in, very strongly, very, very strongly affecting the businesses and affecting businesses in many ways. Now, climate change is one thing that is, that is not only affecting short-term risks, short-term business proposals, it is also affecting the long-term aspects of business. And although in businesses we do think long-term, but short-term profits and short-term measures do make an impact. So it is both these aspects that climate change is affecting now. And climate change is one risk that has been accepted and defined as one of the top 5 risks which will affect businesses in the coming decade, and that has been said in the World Economic Forum of 2023. The risks that come with climate change are not only related to disasters, but they affect your day-to-day functioning of the business. We need to attune, we need to change our mindsets, we need to tune our mindsets, and we need to evaluate these risks. Now, talking of specifics, Across the world, of course, there are different types of climates, the different regions, but specifically to India, the three major risks that the climate change brings is floods, earthquakes, and fires. Fire, not directly related, but it is a changing scenario now, whereas it was initially considered a seasonal risk. Now fire, because of changing climates, it is coming all around the year and all places, affecting businesses very badly. Associated is the costs that are going up. Businesses need to think of these things, and one biggest cost, like my co-panelist Sanjeev also talked of that, is insurance costs. So coming with the climate change is the rise in the insurance costs, which leads to the increased cost of business. So we as business people, I can see the clock ticking away, but we as business people need to address this and take our businesses to be more prepared, make them to be more prepared. We need to evaluate our risks depending on the sector that we are working in, depending on the part of the country that we are working in. We need to evaluate risks. We need to have preparedness plans. And preparedness is, as far as business continuity is concerned, preparedness is also on the individual level. And I personally feel that individual level preparedness contributes 75 to 80% to the community or to the business preparedness. So these are the risks, and which are very, very foreseeable, which are very much needed to be addressed, and they can change the course of the business in entirely in a negative direction. So that needs to be arrested right now. Time to invest in preparedness is right now. As the word goes, act now. So that is the time. Climate risk is one big risk, which later on follows ESG and all. If time permits, we'll discuss on that. That's
Thank you so much, sir.
Vashita, I just want to add one point where he said, imagine till yesterday the snowfall has not happened in Himachal and J&K. Imagine the winters are almost over and the impact of the climate change. What will happen to the water requirement in the summers and the concerns for the army as such?
Very valid point, sir. Akshita, coming quickly to you, and don't watch the watch. Do your thing, girl. Okay. So we have the Indian general elections coming up, right? And that's closer to home, and it's going to impact us very directly. So what are your views on that? What risks do you see, and how do you want to combat them? What would you say to the audience here?
Thank you. I think the music is also like intellectually stimulating this conversation, but I think, ma'am, I would like to say that, just not for India, we have, 50 countries going in for election in 2024, and I think one of our co-panelists mentioned about the World Economic Forum. They have also mentioned this as one of the top risks that we are going to be facing in 2024. And I think, AI is one of the conversation that has been throughout a part of this entire session as well. And I think biggest threat is going to be, having, leading political instability. How we can drive through the political instability with deep fakes and with, threats such as AI is bringing in, also leading to polarization. And that's not just unique to India. I think that's unique to, that's a thing that is going to happen globally throughout different election processes that are going to be taking place across the world. So how do countries battle that? How do countries and companies move ahead from that is going to be, I think, something that we need to look as security professionals. Riot is going to be one of the major risks that we are going to be seeing due to these elections. Both in India, outside India, all the geopolitical aspects that have been spoken in this panel as well is going to affect the election process globally. And again, coming back closer to home, this is also going to be an effect considering the fact that in South Asia, India is always sitting on a ticking bomb. So, this is also, with our neighboring countries, some of them also going into elections. So I think the fact that we need to consider and prepare ourselves as companies on how we can make sure that, our asset protection, employee safety, all of those things are, preemptively surrounded, and in terms of, make sure that we are able to kind of ensure that we are prepared for such actions from all across the security field, and not just security field, as a country as well, because not only is, like I mentioned again and again, I'm mentioning that the fact that it's not just elections that were happening in India, but this is a unique year where we are seeing elections all across the world in most major countries. So I think that, polarization, deepfake is going to be one of the major challenges that we are going to be foreseeing in 2024, and how companies combat that, how we make risk mitigation plans across that, is something that we will have to work towards.
Time is up, definitely. But how many of you would want to listen to Sanjeev sir's view on Iran and Pakistan? He'll just take 2 minutes. Fantastic. Sir, go for it. Iran and Pakistan is something which is happening right now. How does it impact? Just 1 minute by the watch.
This is one of the topics that was given to me yesterday night, so I quickly just read through it. I'll speak very briefly about 2.5 minutes. So it's got 3 important issues. One is geopolitical competition between the 2 countries. Second is interplay manifestation. And third is a completely hidden factor, which is related to trafficking of not only just humans and narcotics, but also of arms. And 3 have different role play in this. Now, bringing back quickly to the situation, as you're aware, Iran targeted Syria, Iraq, and Pakistan at the same time. It says that there is the anti-national elements in Pakistan's soil, deep inside, in the province of Balochistan. Both have Balochistan across. One is Baluchistan and one is Balochistan. So there's a group called Al-Adl, which is Sheikh Al-Adl, which is an Iranian factional group which is operating from Balochistan soils at certain areas. So Iran attacked those targets. It was said it's in response of an attack that this group carried out against the Royal Guards of Iran on the same border. As you're aware, the 2 countries share almost 900 kilometers roughly worth of a border in the south, in the west of Pakistan, and on the east of Iran. And it's a very important area, but it's a very troubled area. You see, and in retaliation to that, Pakistan struck targets of Balochist Liberation Army, which is, they say that they are hurting interest of Pakistan, deep inside about 80-odd kilometers. And either side claimed that no civilians were killed, and either side also claimed the civilians were killed for the respective sites. The Pakistan retaliation. No, I'll tell you what happened. Both premiers were in Davos at that point in time when this happened. As soon as the targets were attacked in Pakistan, the caretaker prime minister, who's just been set up till the elections finalized, rushed to Pakistan. There was a huge chaos in the country, massive statements, the envoy has been called. But when Pakistan attacked Iran, nobody reacted. The guy kept staying in Davos. They didn't even flinch. So it is largely said it's basically a tit-or-tat, only to appease Pakistani population. They have no real role or interest to play. Now, why has this happened? They have a long history of skirmishes, but they're actually friends. Their friendship actually lies borderline between the interstate rivalry to taciturn friendship, in between somewhere. So they are not broken off, but they're not really shaking hands and hugging each other at multiple forums, all for one reason, because they are the champions of Islamic world. Now there are, I'll take one more minute, all right? Sorry. So the 2 nations are completely different. One is a US ally, Pakistan. The other one is completely against US. One is a nuclear state. The other one aspires to be a nuclear state. One is a Shiite region. Pakistan is a Sunni. Now, you know half the problem, maybe 80% of the problem in the world, in Islamic world, is because of Shia-Sunni strife. One wants to be a Muslim defender, Pakistan. The other wants to be a Muslim leader. And finally, Pakistan has a whole lot of terrorist implications, and Iran actually is not impacting the eastern part of the world as far as terrorism is concerned. So they're very different, while they look very similar. But the larger issue that has been missed is here. Because of the Israel-Hamas conflict, and because of the entire nations getting absorbed into Ukraine-Russia conflict and the Israel-Hamas, which is impacting the globe, the players, which are non-state players in Pak-Afghanistan border, have become extremely active and are thriving in the trade. And like I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest things they're thriving on is arms trafficking. And these arms are freely flowing from Afghanistan into Iran, from Afghanistan into Pakistan, and that's what's impacting India. Now, whether this is going to go out of the spiral, obviously, Pakistan has very recently, I think yesterday, said that we don't want the war. So they want to shake hands, so we're willing to sort of talk. So everything looks to be normal. But what's India's interest? Is it in India's interest the two nations fight? Or is it India doesn't want them to fight? So answer is yes and no. And need to strike a very important balance. If you're aware, India is very friendly with Iran. I mean, we had our External Affairs Minister visiting Iran a few months back and giving out statements in support of Iran. If the tensions remain, Pakistan efforts are drawn from their western area, which is the Indian-Pakistan border, and we become easy over there, and the terrorism impact is much lesser because they divert forces and troops towards their Iranian border. But that's about all. The rest, everything is not good. You see, if this turns into a conflict, a full-out conflict, one area that is going to get impacted will be Arabian Sea. And India's 70% of export trade goes via Arabian Sea, and that's going to get crippled. So we're going to be majorly impacted as far as a blown-out war. So interest in India is, and also, I mean, we have to influence Iran to ensure that Pakistan doesn't foster terrorists, and that's also interest of China on their own soil. So yeah, I mean, that's in.
I thought like in the
Vashita,
Oscars, they're going to cut off our mic anytime
2 seconds.
now.
2 seconds. The Houthi effect and this Pakistan-Iran effect. The net result is Iran. So Iran is the common factor for both. So Iran is being taken care by India by diplomatic moves, and I'm sure, as we said, that it will affect India, and maybe we will not have that full-blown war. That's it.
Thank you so much.
And now you know the reason why India is not putting its hands up against Iran in this crisis.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, panelists. It was fantastic with the knowledge that you all have shared. I learned a lot today. I'm sure the audience did too. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, and have the 2024 as a brilliant year, in spite of all these conflicts happening.
Thank you so much.